Welcome back to another episode of Geekorama, a podcast by geeks for geeks. We are produced by superherofiction.com, where real fans hit subscribe. We are your hosts.
I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame's universe.
And I am Trish Heinrich, or TL Heinrich, author of the Vigilantes superhero universe.
For this week's episode of Geekorama, we're going to be discussing the legacy of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, where it got started, where it went wrong, and what we hope for the future. But before we get started, Trish has some pop culture trivia for us.
So I've got a good one for y'all this week. In 1940, in July, the Green Lantern, not Hal Jordan, but Alan Scott premiered. Alan Scott is the actual original Green Lantern, but it's a lot different than the Green Lantern you know. He was a railroad engineer who came into possession of a magic lantern that spoke to him and said it would bring him power. From this, he crafted a magic ring, which gave him a wide variety of powers. The limitations of the ring were that it had to be charged every 24 hours by touching it to the lantern for a time. And it could not, for various reasons, affect objects made of wood. Don't know why. Alan Scott fought mostly ordinary human villains, but he did have a few paranormal ones, such as the immortal Vandal Savage and the zombie Solomon Grundy. He was part of the Justice Society of America and had his own comic, as well as appearing in Comics Cavalcade and All-Star Comics. At the end of World War II, Supers kind of fell in some hard times, and his comic was canceled. He never again had his own title, and later his character was revamped and renamed Sentinel to avoid confusion with Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. And that, my friends, is your pop culture trivia for this week, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott.
So the wood thing is slightly better than Hal Jordan being weak against the color yellow.
Yes, I kind of agree, actually.
And now I'm wondering, so I grew up in a railroad community, so trains were definitely a big thing. And in the old cabooses, they had the lantern hanging in the caboose, which now makes so much more sense. Because the idea of aliens on OA, I think it's called, randomly being like, look, of all the things we want to do, let's make our planet look like a giant lantern. That has always eluded me.
Oh, it's OA.
OA. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, and the fact that, I mean, I had a little action figure. It was one of like the very first action figures I had. And in one hand, he has his little green ring, and the other one, he just runs around with a lantern. And I'm just thinking, wow, you're kind of lame. Like, you have a nightlight is the source of your power.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, and what's really funny is we're watching Stargirl on the DC streaming app with the girls. And this is it's such a great show. And it's very like bringing in the old timey Justice Society of America, like specifically those heroes. So you're really getting exposed to some heroes that they're not mainstream. And one of them does have a lantern and it's green. And I asked Dan, I was like, is that Green Lantern? And he's like, no. And so reading this, I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be Sentinel because they really haven't explained it yet.
Okay.
But I just thought it was really funny reading this because I think everybody assumes that the original Green Lantern was Hal Jordan. It's not. It's Alan Scott.
Which I don't think I ever knew. But the lantern now associated with trains makes a little more sense for an origin.
Yeah.
And the fact that he made his own ring.
That kind of absorbed the power of it. I mean, it's like, how are you going to fight holding this giant ass lantern?
Yeah.
So it does make sense.
I mean, I guess if I found a magic lantern, would I make a ring? I mean, in the 40s, I can't exactly imagine men going, you know what this outfit needs? Some bling.
Well, but a lot of them wore their class rings. If they went to places like West Point, they would have graduation rings. If they were part of the Masons, they would have a Mason's ring. Like men did wear rings signifying like belonging to clubs or, graduating from certain colleges or whatever. I mean, it was something that they did.
I mean, I would have done like a super powerful pocket watch or
I bet we could find a hero that has a pocket watch. I bet we could.
or like a tie clip, like something.
Yeah.
I feel if I'm printing stuff, rings aren't going to work.
Yeah, maybe cufflinks or something like that.
Ooh, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, shoelaces, like
shoelaces.
Like a ring.
A ring.
And a lantern. The two of those just in my head have never.
Yeah, but honestly, it actually does make more sense. Like Hal Jordan, like charging his ring on the lantern makes more sense, understanding, the original guy, like this is where they kind of got it from.
And I will say, for as crap that the Green Lantern movie gets, I did like, well, it's mostly because it's Ryan Reynolds, but I like his creative use of the rings. Of all this is the one thing that's always burned me about Justice League Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
All the things you can imagine that ring does, most of the time you point it and go pew, 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 pew with little lasers. Like, no, I want a race car to come out of nowhere and do something over the top because it's fueled by like your willpower and your imagination. And
exactly. It's what you can imagine it being. And I can imagine quite a few things, honestly.
I mean, I would abuse that power a lot. It would not be good for anyone.
You'd be recalled to OA quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay,
so
the geek outs?
I do want to do geek outs. You go first.
Okay, so I've been, because there's not a lot of new movies coming out, and the ones that are coming out just really aren't looking all that wonderful. Though Becky is high on my list right now. I'm maybe going to watch that tonight.
Which one?
It's called Becky. It's basically Home Alone with R rating.
Really?
Yeah.
Where's that streaming? She chops people up?
Yeah. There's a lot of blood involved in this Home Alone scenario.
Is it a horror film?
Thriller maybe. It's basically someone kidnaps her family, and this wayward tween who has an attitude problem is going to save the day with her attitude problem, and she basically chops people up.
Okay, you're gonna have to let me know how that is. Anyway, what are you geeking out about?
So I was watching some like my old favorites, and one of my favorites comes from 2009, and it's a movie called Ink. It is, no one has ever heard of it. I mean, let's just be very honest. I had a chance to screen it at the Somerville Theater in Boston when the director was there, which was just kind of cool. Also where I met Amber Benson, just randomly.
I love her.
Is exactly as wonderful as you want her to be.
Oh, yay.
She is the star you want to meet. And so this whole movie, the trailer for it was amazing. The budget is super like bottom end, and there are special effects, so you kind of got to walk into it knowing what you're getting. But the opening monologue is a woman talking to a young girl in bed, and she's tucking her in and basically saying, I'm the person who brings you and your friends and your family good dreams. And the girl just rolls over and looks at her and goes, who brings the nightmares? And cue the rest of the movie. And so it's super high concept. And you gotta watch every bit of it because like time dilation comes into play.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful. I mean, no budget. The music is amazing. But the thing that was so awesome about it is the director, and I'm going to get this wrong, Jamin Winans, is the guy who did all the special effects himself. And in his basement, he rotoscoped for almost 2 years to finish this film.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And when you see what he rotoscoped, you're like, damn, that paid off. It's not a horror film, but it is a creepy atmosphere.
Okay.
And the soundtrack, because he couldn't hire anyone to do the score, he did it himself. And it's hauntingly beautiful. And so I've been listening to the soundtrack and I was like, screw it, let's just do this again. And I watched it and oh my God, when you know the twist and the turns, it makes it even better.
Oh, wow.
I included a link to the trailer. It's amazing. You just have to understand that you're not getting the best acting, and it's still good. Just no one's getting an award. And the special effects are strategically used because of money. But I would highly suggest, if people like indie films and they like something dark with good action scenes, actually, I would definitely suggest seeing it.
That's awesome. I think people are probably looking for just different right now. There's so few new things that are being put out.
And that 10 years later, it holds up. So
oh wow, that's impressive.
I definitely enjoyed watching it for that reason, because I can't remember what I watched a oldie but a goodie the other day. I can't even remember what it was.
Not so much, huh?
Oh, Event Horizon.
Oh, my brother used to love that movie.
It terrified me as a kid. And the concept is good. The CGI, state of the art.
Oh.
And no.
Well, that movie. Not so much. Not so much.
Sam Neill was the best part of it, and that's not saying a lot. So, what are you geeking out about?
Well, I hate to go back to a well I've already talked about, but oh my God, Lucifer on Netflix. So when I brought this up before, I was still in season 1, and I was like, it's got some issues with representations of people of color, and they did fix that. Yeah, it ended up being a much more balanced, diverse cast. So the protagonist, the antagonists, some of them kind of morphed into protagonists. One character, Mazikeen, kind of goes back and forth between being a good guy and being a bad guy. And it fits her character, and it makes her just a really rich and interesting character, especially for a supporting one. But I think this last weekend, or maybe the weekend before, anyway, the last couple of weekends, I've been binging it, watching 5, 6, 7 episodes in one day. And I actually roped Dan into it. And so he was watching it with me at night, and he's like, okay, what did I miss? And so I would catch him up on it. And there were a couple parts he's like, okay, I want to see that scene. And so we'd have to go find the scene. And he's like, okay, now we can watch the next episode. I'm like, okay. But I finished the show. And I absolutely loved it. I will say season 3 was way too long, 26 episodes. I'm sorry, but there is no show on television that can support a season that long.
Was it still CW at that point?
So I thought it was CW. It was always Fox. And then after season 3, they canceled it very unceremoniously. And honestly, if I had been watching it in real time and found out they canceled it, I would have been pissed, because they left it on a huge cliffhanger. And so Netflix picked it up, and they were originally just going to do a season 4 with 10 episodes and then a season 5 with 10 episodes and call it good. That was the contract. And they did season 4. And if season 3 was a cliffhanger, season 4 was like a Thelma and Louise, go over the cliff, in a good way, not in a bad way. They didn't jump the shark, but they left you with this huge, what the hell did you do kind of moment. And so they announced season 5 was going to be the last, and fans were like, no. So then they said, okay, well, we'll break season 5 into 2 parts. We'll do 8 episodes in August, and then we'll release the other 8 episodes a few months later. And then they came out like 2 weeks after that announcement and said, we're going to do a season 6. So now it's they're going to do season 5 in 2 parts, and we're getting 16 episodes total out of that. And then they're doing a season 6 for 10 episodes, and it's going to wrap it up then. But I love Tom Ellis, who plays the title character Lucifer. He's just perfect in this role. And season 3 got really bogged down in the middle because it kind of became the Lucifer's a juvenile asshole show, because he would make these decisions and you're like, no, you really shouldn't do that. Why are you doing that? Why is no one telling you not to do that? And it became this really bad comedic loop there for, I would say, 4 or 5 episodes. It was just, the character growth got stunted, and I started getting a little bored. And then they finally pulled themselves out of that and actually like finished giving him an arc for season 3.
I wonder when the deal for the network switch happened.
I don't know. I think there was a period of 3 months between when season 3 ended and when the announcement came that Netflix was picking it up. But I also think that it must have been in the works, because Tom Ellis made a bet with somebody on set, like a stunt coordinator or somebody like that, and they said, Tom Ellis agreed, like, if we get picked up by another network for a 4th season, I will let you give me like a 3-month bodybuilding makeover, because this guy had been hounding him like, you're the devil, you should be more ripped, because he was like wiry and he was, he had definition, but he wasn't like, ripped. So they got picked up by Netflix, and Tom Ellis is like, okay. And they had 3 months between when the deal was signed and when they started filming. And so in that 3-month period of time, he put on like 45 pounds of muscle. It was crazy.
But I felt kind of weird that this is a DC property.
Yeah, so it's from Sandman. It's Neil Gaiman's Sandman, the character of Lucifer from that. It got really popular with DC Vertigo readers. And so then it spun off into a very limited run of Lucifer having his own title. But the tone is very different between the comic and the show.
I was going to say, because I would find it hard to prime time a Sandman.
Yeah, no. They took his title comic, so his solo run, which is, the premise is the devil gets tired of hell, he goes on a vacation to LA. But that's pretty much all they lifted from the comics.
Okay.
And then they turned it into a police procedural because it worked better for the television format.
Yeah.
But in the comics, Lucifer is on a mission to save mankind. God gives him this deal like, okay, if you do this for me, then you get to call in a favor with me. You get whatever you want. And so Lucifer's like, okay. So he leaves hell and he leaves Los Angeles and he does this mission to save humanity. That's what the comics are. In the show, he rides along with Detective Decker and they fall in love, and then she hates him because he acts like a 12-year-old, but then he does something sweet and she likes him again. And yeah. But they did a great job in season 4 of bringing in the supernatural aspect. They had really dropped that in season 3 to its detriment, I feel like, because it's a supernatural character. You should have those elements. And so season 4, Netflix really brought that back. And in season 5, it's been announced that they're bringing in God. Like they cast, I forget the actor's name, but he was in 24, and he does the Allstate commercials. He's a very like distinguished looking black man. He's got this great deep voice.
I know exactly who you mean.
Yeah, so he was cast as God.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it's the angels. The other angels they brought in were women of color. So the angel of death is this freaking adorable Asian actress. She looks Filipino, perhaps. and she's short and she's got this page boy little cut, and she basically like befriends one of the supporting characters because she's lonesome. She only ever gets to talk to people when they're dead, and it's boring. And so Lucifer, because Lucifer's like, what are you doing here? I mean, and why have you been stalking one of my friends? And she's like, I'm her childhood friend. So it's just this adorable, like, they do really creative things with the angelic characters. And like I said, the representation got a lot better. So that's what I've been geeking out about is Lucifer.
All right, so now we're going to talk about some Hugh Jackman, some Wolverine, and of course, we're going to talk about some extremely horrible director decisions throughout this.
Yes, studio decisions too.
Yeah.
It can't all be laid at the director's feet, although a heaping handful will be.
I'll throw a lot at Bryan Singer on this one.
Oh God, yeah, let's do that. I'm all for doing that.
So, currently, Hugh Jackman holds the record for the most portrayals of a character in a Marvel movie. He is one ahead of Samuel L. Jackson simply because of a photograph in Deadpool.
Thank you, Ryan Reynolds.
Though, if it was going to be two actors to duke it out, I'm glad it's Samuel L. Jackson and Hugh Jackman. I would watch that buddy comedy any day of the week.
Oh my God, somebody needs to make that.
So one of the things we want to talk about is because Hugh Jackman has now been going for, he did 19 years of Wolverine, which in this day and age, that is your career.
It's incredible.
Which I guess I didn't realize that Hugh Jackman didn't have much of a career before this.
Not really, no. I think he was known in Australia. I mean, he had a career that started there.
He was known for stage productions, which, you know, is always going to be his first love.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense when, you know, Les Miserables came back around and he was the only person excited about it. But
you mean Anne Hathaway wasn't excited about dying of syphilis? What's wrong with her?
The movie, if I want to be depressed, I'll go stare into the void of life instead of watching that movie. He also did The Greatest Showman, which I happen to love, despite the fact it is so horribly auto-tuned. So
and the plot is so thin you could see right through it, but I adore that movie. I really do.
I will watch it over and over again. And I don't even want to watch the movie. I want to watch the behind the scenes where they record the music beforehand.
I know.
Because Hugh Jackman he gets into it.
He's like a kid in a candy store with anything musical theater. I love it.
And I mean, for 19 years of doing this, the only person who can say they've been doing it you can't even say that anymore, would have been Patrick Stewart. And even that ended with Days of Future Past. So
that's true.
You know, there's a weird trio that show up.
Actually, it ended with Logan.
Oh, yes, it did end with Logan.
Yeah. I had to stop and think about that because yeah.
So
wow.
The career for him has spanned just as long.
Yeah.
Not as many movies, but probably because Patrick Stewart made better life choices. So, why don't we actually start right at the beginning and work our way through the ages? That way we can end on a happy note.
Okay, let's do it. I think you've seen more of them because I haven't seen the Wolverine. That's the only one I haven't seen. And I don't really remember X-Men Origins except that it was vomitly inducingly bad.
So everyone who has probably already figured out that I get my geek card called into question because X3 is one of my favorites. And I think we're going to reveal why this time. So,
I think people want to know before they bring out the pitchforks.
yeah, I have a justified reason, and we will talk about it. Okay, so in 2000, so in 1999, I was in a movie theater. I was going to college. It was in the fall. Maybe it was early 2000. Maybe it was early 2000. And I was watching another movie. I can't remember what. And the trailer for X-Men came on. And this little theater, people stood up. People not only stood up and clapped, they left after the trailer.
Oh my God, seriously?
So it was like a cheap seat type theater, so it cost like $2 to get in. And we had all watched the trailer like 1,000 times on the computer, but people wanted to see it big. They paid and they left. So this was a really big deal, especially for, comic book fans, because, we've had horrible adaptations for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And we've had some really horrible. I think Blade was probably the shining example for me.
Yeah.
But so now we're getting mutants. Okay, so I'm super stoked. So the rundown of this plot is. Okay.
Can you say it with a straight face?
We've got to completely detach from comics. So I'm ditching all comic knowledge and we're going straight movies. So basically, the X-Men are going to get together for some odd reason that doesn't really make sense. And they're going to fight Magneto, who for some reason is trying to turn the entire world into a bunch of amphibians. Supposedly mutants, but basically we just see a giant water monster amphibian.
Yeah, well, that melts. Like he melted.
And that is the plot.
Yeah.
There is no substance to be had. It is pretty gut-wrenching.
And for some reason he needs Rogue. Like it's basically like he needs to channel his magnetic powers through her into the machine without killing himself, but it will kill her. And I never understood how she was the conduit, and how his magnetic powers had anything to do with this.
Don't rewatch this movie. Ever.
But I have to ask, okay, you had this very visceral, exciting experience watching the trailer. So when you went to see the movie in the theater, what happened?
So there's a lot that this movie gets right. And what it gets right is mostly Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman. So we get the arcs we wanted. We even get the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, who they've had so many iterations. I'm fine with whatever it turned out. Mm-hmm. We get the camaraderie, yet arch nemesis between Professor X and Magneto. Okay, that's awesome. We get a little Canadian Canuck, which awesome. And I wonder if that's considered racial. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I don't know if I've ever heard the term. Okay, Canuck.
Yeah, it's a Maine people definitely call Canadians Canucks. We even say Knucklehead.
Okay.
I might be very wrong on this one. Sorry, Canadians. But what didn't make sense and what burned me right from the get-go is, why is Rogue even in this movie? She serves no purpose. She has no motivation. She is just some whiny little brat. And I'm sorry, you were useless. You were useless for an entire franchise.
Yes.
Oh my God, just go away. And somehow you stayed just relevant enough, AKA hot enough, to stay in it.
I think True Blood helped because she got naked so many times in that show. Seriously.
She started True Blood, I think, after X2, which I was a big True Blood fan until the last season. It went off the rails.
Yeah, we could have a whole podcast about that show, honestly.
So him being this fighter in a cage match, okay, this is perfectly Wolverine. I can understand this. Not knowing his past, only knowing Logan, okay, perfect, got it. Being a loner, and even Wolverine throughout all the comics, let's just go through. His BFFs have been Kitty Pryde, Jubilee, never Rogue, but he's like, hey, orphan girl, you want to be my sidekick? Oh my God, he is Batman with Robins.
Yeah, but there are so many, like, you get into a shady ass truck with a guy who just beat the shit out of somebody who you have no idea if he's going to take you in the woods and kill you. What is wrong with you?
You just left the Louisiana bayou and you somehow wound up in Canada? Like,
yeah, I don't understand. Like, how did she hitch her way there without getting killed?
That's probably...
Did she hijack a...
That is her real superpower, to be where she shouldn't be at all times.
Yeah.
And then the introduction for bringing him into the X-Men is basically, oh no, Cerebro, blip on the radar, whatever. We just need to bring him into the fold.
Yeah.
So the first fight is between him and Sabretooth. Awesome. The arch nemesis battle right up front. Oh my God.
Doesn't one of them go through the wind? It's Logan that goes through the windshield, right? Because I'm remembering, like, there's a log that falls and he hits it and then he goes through the windshield.
And like he gets up and it's the first time you really see the healing factor kick in. And come to find out the tree fell because Sabretooth took it down. And they have a little thing, though they never seem to know each other, but we'll get
to that. We will get to that.
And then all of a sudden Cyclops saves the day, which, I mean, for the most part, is in the true spirit of X-Men.
Yeah. It's Cyclops and Storm. I think. Yeah.
And there's even like some hot and heavy moments with Jean Grey. Okay, that's still very comic book.
Okay, I gotta tell you, I loved that scene.
I
loved the scene in the lab. I was like, yes, I am here for this. Because I shipped them when I was a kid watching the cartoon. I was like, Jean, why the hell are you with Scott? Why hit that? Come on.
And it was the perfect amount of sexual without being, I mean,
creepy.
He's unconscious. Like,
yeah.
Consent, Jean Grey. But that relationship was perfect between the two of them. And like, you are my Jean Grey forever. So, and then it becomes the Wolverine show.
Yeah. Well, and I also do like, really quick, how he gave Scott shit from the very beginning.
Oh yeah. The thing that got the movie theater to like roar was when he gave him the middle claw.
Yes.
The movie theater, like everyone in that movie theater hated just as much as me. It was perfect. And James Martin as Cyclops was actually, for me, a really good Cyclops.
Yeah.
He's kind of a dude you want to hate because he's a decent person. So the battle happens, and Wolverine and Magneto, just realistically, and I've never understood this in the comic books, and Magneto says this quite a lot. Why do you keep sending the dude with metal in his body to kill me?
Well, and in the comics, Magneto at one point does pull all the adamantium off of his skeleton, almost killing Logan, if I remember correctly.
Fatal Attractions, X-Men 25. I don't know why I remember that. It's a
That's impressive, man. That's
and Hugh Jackman was the best part of the movie. I mean, him and Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
I do think Ian McKellen was very good for the role, but I think he got better.
They didn't give him a lot to do.
No, he basically just held poses over and over again.
Well, he steered menacingly, which he does very well.
Yeah, and when he and Professor X have their little moments, you're like, oh, these are believable friends who aren't getting along right now.
Yeah.
It is literally grown-up frenemies.
Yes, it is. And real life, full-on, like, platonic soulmates. They are.
And what I think made Wolverine so good at this, and what really owned the role, was one, as far as the fighting goes, it's vicious. It's brutal. Whereas, I mean, Halle Berry did whatever she did, and then Cyclops constantly just pokes himself in the side of the head and shoots at lasers, and even Famke Jensen just looks and things happen. Whereas Wolverine actually got the physical aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And while he wasn't as brutal as you expected, that cage match in the beginning kind of gave you that.
I think he was allowed to get more feral as the films went on, because I don't remember, like in the first X-Men movie, I don't remember feeling a sense of primal like rage from him. He's grumpy as all hell. He has no fucks left to give. It's very obvious. But the primal like ferocity really came in later films, I feel like.
And there's a weird juxtaposition because of Sabretooth actually being voiced by a lion.
Okay, so in the cartoon, here's the thing that I'm wondering, because a lot of the things about the movie remind me of the cartoon, and Sabretooth is one of them, to be honest with you. It looked like somebody saw the early 90s cartoon, late 80s, early 90s cartoon, and was like, we'll just do that.
And Bryan Singer, like, thanks for getting that movie out there and starting this thing, but you didn't know how to deal with what you had.
No, he did not.
And he does not understand how to correctly use an ensemble without sticking some of them off the side and then coming back.
Well, and if we look at the X-Men movies, like the first three, and compare them to the first Avengers film, it's very clear that the first Avengers film, that's how you do an ensemble, honestly, because everybody has their moments to shine. Everybody's characters are realized. They have agency. I mean, it was a really Herculean job that Joss Whedon got, and Bryan Singer was not up to the task. Let's be honest.
I mean, you also do have to say that this is how many ever years earlier. The sheer budget, the scene with the cyclones that Storm starts actually is those 6 cyclones that are created is the entire budget of the movie Twister.
Holy crap, you're kidding me.
Which only had 1 cyclone in it.
Oh my God.
So,
that is insane.
Like, and this is one of those things, like the reason X-Men had been on the table for quite some time, but the special effects hadn't gotten there. And I think they could have done a much better job based on who they picked.
Yeah.
Cyclops requires a lot of money to use his powers. Jean Grey, she just has to look constipated. So
Scott!
That's forever in my head.
Forever.
So then you get to X2, which is basically the X-Men prequel, sequel, Wolverine origin story, which has almost nothing to do with X-Men and everything to do with Wolverine.
Well, because they saw who's our cash cow, and it was Hugh Jackman. And
and Rebecca Romijn.
Yeah, exactly. God, that poor woman.
Yep.
I was going to, and I didn't have time. I was going to actually see if there was any trivia about if he ended up with his shirt off more often in later films.
Yeah.
He did?
Yes.
Because I really think that was a draw. Honestly, he's this hot guy.
You need to go watch the Wolverine then, because...
Oh, do I have to?
Basically, he's shirtless.
Just the whole time? Oh, well, maybe I'll enjoy it.
and you see the level of dedication that he was willing to go for a character in that movie.
Okay. He was, I will say this about Hugh Jackman, from the get-go, he was fully committed to figuring this character out, to doing what it took to make this happen.
So his wife told him not to do the movie because it sounded dumb. And then he agreed to do the film, not kind of knowing what it was going to be about. And so he started researching wolves because he thought the Wolverine had something to do with wolves.
Oh no.
And then when they explained to him what was going to be happening, he started walking around his house all the time wearing the claws. And he gave himself a cut on the leg that required stitches, and now he has a scar. He cut himself in the forehead, and apparently he poked it through his cheek somewhere.
So they were actually sharp. Wait a minute, that makes no sense, because in fight scenes he would have hurt people.
Yes, so I have this image that he is literally duct taping butcher knives to his hand to pretend. Like, I have this image.
He's playing dress up like a little kid. Oh my God, this makes me love him more. I'll be honest.
And so, I mean, he researched, and the whole Anna Paquin thing, she had no idea what X-Men were. She didn't read any comics until the second movie, which really miffed me.
Yeah, it miffed me too.
In the second movie, basically, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is, because there's only one Wolverine, the whole story is about his origin. And the movie takes on a much more militaristic vibe because he has government ties, and it's, part of his origin story. And they did a pretty good job of his origin story. The thing that really miffed me is they really messed up Lady Deathstrike.
Yes, she was like a few scenes and then she's dead. Are you kidding me right now?
And guess who leads the Reavers in Logan? Lady Deathstrike.
Oh, seriously?
So there's some horrible things that are starting to happen. Hugh Jackman's not one of them, though. I will say that.
But they did start to basically see a lot of these really beloved characters as throwaways. Like, they were disposable. To me, that is exactly how they treated Lady Deathstrike. She was there for shock value. Oh, look, a Lady Wolverine, and then she's dead. She's just disposable.
And Alan Cummings as Nightcrawler was a character that everyone was waiting for, and they gave him like this really cool alternative backstory, angelic markings, and now you understand Nightcrawler as a priest. I was like, wow. In very little, you have done an awesome job of backstory. And then they killed him off in the video game.
Well, and Dan says the best X-Men scene in the entire franchise is that opening scene with him in the Oval Office, just foom, foom, foom. I mean, he's like, that's Nightcrawler. That's how you do Nightcrawler. And they didn't do anything else with him in the entire movie. That was it. What a waste.
And there's a fan film that does a better job than that.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of an issue because they didn't know exactly what they wanted his backstory to be at this point. And so they went with the General Stryker thing, which, okay, that works in with comics. There's the Alkali Lake thing, which has been retconned so many times. I mean, it might as well be correct. The sun being a mutant was kind of a cool concept.
It gave it a dark edge.
Yeah.
Honestly, like what he was willing to do to his son, and then like turning his son into just it actually, to this day, when I see that movie, it does make my skin crawl. Because it's so creepy. And just ugh.
And the comic is just as dark with it. So I mean, it was true to the tone. But it really just became Wolverine and friends.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorite scenes of all the X-Men is the military storming the mansion, which I thought was because we got to see all these other mutants. Like Siren is in there, Colossus pops in,
Kitty Pryde's in there too, which everybody wanted. Why? I do not understand. I just don't, because she's way more of an interesting character than Rogue, in my personal opinion. And actually, if you want to do Rogue. Have her start out as part of the League of, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Put her in there.
And we get our second Jubilee, because don't worry, we're going to get more. Because Jubilee.
Really? Wait. Well, they have her sitting next to Rogue in the first one, like in a classroom scene.
Yep.
It's yellow jacket, goggles. You know exactly who that is.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they don't do anything with her. And it pissed me off because I know people think that Jubilee is just a waste of a character, but I personally loved her in the cartoon. Like, she was one of my favorites.
And in the comic book, when she was introduced in Australia with the Reavers, we'll get to that. I got some beef coming. She was a cool character. I mean, she survived with the X-Men without them knowing it for quite some time, and then Wolverine was like, "Yo, kid, get out of the wall." So she had potential, and she held her own with Wolverine for quite some time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a cluster of just. And X2 is most people's favorite because they like Wolverine, and I just don't care.
Well, it has a great. I know we have to. This episode is going to be a little bit longer than our usual ones. It has one of my favorite. I have several favorite moments, but it has one of my favorite moments of Hugh Jackman because after Jean dies, Cyclops is like. I think he's being a little melodramatic. I mean, I know the love of your life just got hit with a wave of water and is now, seafood. But he was still a little, I didn't quite believe his grief. I was like, wow, we're really forcing it today, aren't we? But Hugh Jackman next to him, and I don't think Hugh Jackman is the best actor. I mean, he's good, but he's not like great. But in that moment, it was like he took the hit. And he very quietly was like, she's gone. She's gone. Like, it wasn't trying to do too much with it. He's crying. He's very affected, but it wasn't this huge over the top moment for him. And I really liked it, actually. I think that's how he would react to Jean's death.
Then we get to X3. Phoenix number 1. Because apparently we need 2.
We didn't. But they did it anyway.
Because everyone was asking for it. We got it by the same person who did the first one.
Yep, paint by numbers.
Okay, so X3 comes along, and what I found so just... Okay, the reason I like this movie is because there's basically no plot worth mentioning, because who cares? And basically, the whole movie is just the director going... Oh, look, we haven't used that mutant. Stick them in there. Show their powers. We want that one. Let's Psylocke. I don't even know what the Crimson Dawn is, but let's make her walk out of a wall. Let's, Kitty Pryde could take on the Juggernaut, because why not? Juggernaut. Let's just multiple man? Sure, why not? Like, they literally just went through the book and just added everyone.
Well, and they had, so Bryan Singer was supposed to direct this, and he started getting accused of sexual assault. Yep. And so they took him off the film, and rightly so. And I forget who they replaced him with, but he has been on record as saying his entire goal was to kill the franchise by killing as many X-Men as possible.
And there are some really cool moments in it. Callisto is in it. You wouldn't know it because it doesn't follow anything to do with the comic books. And you basically have to negate every backstory of every person in the book.
Yeah, you do.
And just accept the fact this is the name of the person and watch them use their power. And I mean,
disconnect. Oh, wow, that's cool.
Tattoo on her face is this.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The Omega symbol. So
you have to this X3 in particular, you have to completely disconnect from the comic books. Just don't even try to make it mash up, because it's not going to. And
realistically, it had a good fight scene. And Kelsey Grammer as Beast is probably the most complicated thing for me to believe in the universe. Not because of Kelsey Grammer. It was just the CGI was not ready for taking on that character. It was a little awkward. And none of it logically made sense. No. So ultimately, what we have at the end is Jean Grey is going all, I think, Phoenix. We can't really tell. She's just having a bad day. She's having a really bad day. And I mean, you've been killed and brought back from the dead, and I'm not even sure why she did what she did. She was just in a mood.
We could probably go all day about how it doesn't make sense that the Phoenix Force, which was a celestial fire force, came from water.
The plot line
doesn't make fucking sense.
It's taken from X-Men Ultimates, and it follows it pretty closely. So people who have an issue with the comic, it's not the canon, it's X-Men Ultimates, and it does follow quite closely. Also, we watched Professor X die, just pointing that out. Just hold on to that. We'll get there. So one of the best things in the world was once upon a time, there was an X-Men What If. And What If is a comic book that literally just asked, what if this happened? Mm-hmm. And what if Jean chose Wolverine? And that is the ending of the comic in X3. So
Wolverine killing her?
No, Wolverine doesn't kill her. In the comic book, she destroys the universe because Wolverine has been in love with her for so long, he can't give her up. In canon, Cyclops kills her because he knows it's what she would want and he honors what she would want. So that was my beef with X3, that they turned Wolverine into Cyclops and then just jammed that up all over the place.
Yeah, I have so many issues with X3, but the issue with Wolverine killing Jean is that it actually has less to do with Wolverine for me and more to do with the fact that it falls under the woman is too powerful, woman has to be killed or depowered, or both trope. And I hate it. I hate that trope. I hate that she was like, kill me, please. Ew. Just ew.
And in the X-Men Ultimate, I believe, I can't actually remember what happens with that. She lives. Or no, she destroys mutants everywhere in the world.
Dark.
I think. Yeah, it gets weirdly dark. So Wolverine in that was the main character.
Yeah.
Opposite of her. But their whole point of the two of them being featured characters was like the sexual tension between them. Yeah. But there was no sexual tension, just him being all Cyclopsy and Jean.
Well, there was the scene where she basically like jumps him in the infirmary. And he's into it for a few seconds until he's like, wait a minute. You just came back from the dead, and are you sure this is what you want to do? And then she goes kind of crazy, Phoenixy on him, and he's like, whoa, yeah, you're not in your right mind. And whatever.
So you basically screwed up the only thing that Wolverine had other than being a psycho with knives.
Yeah.
So we now have one good. X2, he did well. X3, director screw up. Yeah. Then we get to X-Men First Class.
Wait. Are we gonna do Origins? Origins and the Wolverine.
Yeah, so let's do Origins first, which
we're gonna make this as painless as possible and just say it sucked. Yeah.
There's nothing that we can say that could redeem this film in any way, shape, or form, and this includes Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman woke up in the morning and said, shit, I have to make this movie. And he did a good job. Yep. He gave it a solid 90% because he saw the train wreck coming.
It was a different script when he signed on to it. So that I can't imagine the horror of getting those rewrites. I really can't.
And so if we're doing timeline, so far we have X-Men 1, 2, 3, and Wolverine Origin is the prequel to those three. Mm-hmm. His arch nemesis in this is Sabretooth, but he didn't know Sabretooth in X-Men 1. So we're getting some continuity issues. They solve it in the last 30 seconds of the movie. And it, again, Hugh Jackman, like, you got handed a shit script. Sorry.
Yeah, he really did.
ultimately, he's defeated by an adamantium bullet because apparently a bullet made out of indestructible material can pierce indestructible material.
Which also is problematic for Logan. And we'll get to that.
So the really what Wolverine Origins was meant to do was meant to be a pilot movie for other origin stories. And we were supposed to get the next one was going to be Magneto, which I don't know why he needed one, but sure, I like the character, so let's do this. And they snuck a backdoor pilot in with Gambit, who was probably the worst character of them all. And that's saying something, because Ryan Reynolds' body double, who plays half the movie as Ryan Reynolds, wasn't the worst thing in that film.
Gambit was in that movie?
Yeah.
God, I honestly have blocked most of that movie out, except in the Deadpool films when Ryan Reynolds just has to drudge it up and make us all relive it. Thanks, Ryan.
And I was really looking forward because, and this movie is just like the comic book in the fact that Wolverine's origin gets retconned over and over and over again. Samuel L. Jackson should have actually been in that movie with him as part of the. Yeah, he was the person who actually fought with him on that squad.
Wow.
It was Sabretooth, Maverick, Domino, Samuel L. Jackson, and him, and maybe Deadpool. Don't quote me on that. But so I was looking forward to the arch nemesis thing again with, Professor X and Magneto and Sabretooth and Wolverine. And Liev Schreiber, like, dude, I love you, but wow.
Shit script. Again, you got handed a shit script.
And their obsession with making a human run like a cat. Did we not watch Catwoman?
Oh my God. It's so fucking bad. It's awkward to watch that movie. You feel bad for these people that they had to do this.
And you can see where the wires are attached in the awkward motion. So again, the best part of it is Hugh Jackman, when he decides to go animalistic with Wolverine, he does a really great job of this. And that is something I will give him credit for. You have no speaking lines and you have to be feral.
Mm-hmm. And he does he grunts and growls without making it like a put on, like really weird sounding. He makes it sound natural. And I feel weird saying that, but he does it. And he's very physical. He's willing to put his body through a lot in order to do this in every film.
And it gets even worse as we go on.
Yeah.
So into the Wolverine, where Hugh Jackman actually went on a dehydration diet and would pass out on set every day. And so he jacked up for this movie to such an extreme, and it's probably the most muscular you will ever see Hugh Jackman. It's not appropriate for his body. He talks about how bad, what horrible things he was doing to himself to get that physique. And what he ultimately wound up doing was, weeks leading up to set, he would slowly lower his water intake. And on film days, he wouldn't drink anything. And you're under set lights and sweating. And everyone knew, Hugh's about to pass out. Get ready.
Jeez.
But if you see his physique, you understand why he did it. Though I really props to you for committing to a character, but
it's not necessary though. I mean, I don't think that level is necessary. I know there are other actors that have gone on short-term dehydration diets for certain shots, like certain topless shots where the director's like, we really want you to look ripped. And so they'll do it for the day of, and then that's it. And I even think that is no. Why are you asking these people to do these really dangerous things to themselves?
And you want to ask some things like, as a franchise, we get Rebecca Romaine Stamos was in that film to be tits and ass.
Yeah.
She wasn't meant to be a character. We didn't care. We want a nipple. So Not saying it's right, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
No one went to Hugh Jackman to say, I want to do you. I mean, pretty much every dude in the crowd probably has a hall pass for Hugh Jackman anyways.
Yes, this is true.
And I'm pretty sure every woman who went, who's probably like 10% of the crowd, also has a hall pass. Their husbands are okay with that. Everyone gets a hall pass for Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think at any moment when I was like, damn, I'm going to think about this tonight. Like,
there does come a point of diminishing return on this stuff, honestly.
Yeah. And he's already the character you love. So making him sex appeal to try and bring in a different demographic, they might as well have just made it a romance story, which they kind of sort of did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but that's what I've heard. You want to, should we do First Class? No, First Class is the next one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
timeline is all.
As far as I'm concerned, is probably my number 3 for him.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising because that movie was torn up.
Now, it's horrible for a lot of other reasons. The mutants that they introduced, they were like, let's just completely butcher this. The Silver Samurai becomes a bodysuit of armor and not a character. So, like, there were weird things that they didn't need to do.
Okay.
And they overcomplicated things for the sake of a convoluted story. But Hugh Jackman made that a good movie.
Okay. I will have to watch it then.
You get to see his martial arts aspect, and it does. He does get some more creative fighting scenes in it.
Okay.
So from that point, I liked it. The next one is First Class, which for the 10 seconds you're in it.
Yeah, it is my top Hugh Jackman as Wolverine moment of all time, because to me, it is the most Wolverine moment of all time.
So if you're looking at this movie-wise, this is now his 6th film, but it's the first in the chronology. So
yeah, it is. That's true.
We were talking beforehand. Professor X has met Wolverine 3 times, and he forgets about it every time.
Every time.
But his entire, you go. This is your favorite.
So we have James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, which, woohoo, love them so much. They made Days of Future Past one of my favorite films. They're going around. There's this really fun montage of them going around and recruiting mutants for their mutant school. And they hear about this one in Canada, or is it West Virginia that he's in this time? I don't remember. Wherever he is. And they go into this bar, and the shot is it pans over, like up from like the bar top over to this hand picking up a cigar from an ashtray, and it goes up, and it's Hugh Jackman. He puts, he gets his stogie in his mouth, and then behind him you see Professor X and Magneto come in, and they say, "Logan, we'd like to talk to you about," and he says, "What does he say?"
Go fuck yourselves.
Go fuck yourselves. And it's just simple. He's like, go fuck yourself. And they're both like, okay. And they turn around and they walk out, and that's it. That's
look at the defeat on their face.
Yes.
Like, nothing could have been more of a Wolverine moment than that.
Nothing. And it's not like he doesn't growl. He doesn't say bub. He doesn't have any claws. Nothing. He's just sucking on his cigar, smoking his cigar, drinking his whiskey. Go fuck yourself. And that's it.
And that is probably just as good as the moment where he gives Cyclops the finger. Like,
yes.
Those are such nuanced things that people who know Wolverine were like, that is the Wolverine we want.
Yeah.
So, and James McAvoy and Fassbender, the sell on the, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Like they know, they're like, we're not going to fight this fight.
Yeah.
We're out of here. We're gone. See you later.
And it was an amazing, like, boom, done. That's it.
We're good.
So Now this is where all the chronology just completely falls apart and nothing holds up whatsoever.
Basically, I think what they were like was, we want to reset. This is how we're going to do it.
So to force First Class into the continuity, they had to do Days of Future Past, where they go to the past of Days of First Class and reboot First Class, so that the X-Men 1, 2, and 3 and Wolverine Origins never happen.
Yep.
Except they didn't explain that.
Nope.
So
but they did later when fans were like, wait a minute. And they were like, oh yeah, it's all gone now. It's okay.
So this movie made me mad. I hated the First Class side of this movie.
Okay.
The fact that Mystique is a prominent player, like, dude, I hate you. You ruined this movie. The fact that you're going to fight Sentinels. Okay, we got some awesome giant robots. So who are we going to use for mutants to fight them? Beast. No, just Beast. But what about someone who has laser? No, just Beast.
Didn't Psylocke? There were twins. The twins that, God, what were their names?
So there's Quicksilver.
No, these were like, they opened a portal and one of the other, it was like they were portal jumpers.
Oh, that's Blink, but that's only in the future.
Oh, that's true.
Those
Sentinels, though, were amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Those were terrifying.
And in the First Class side of things, you had an awesome opportunity. Bring in some Cyclops so he can laser beam stuff, and you can have a giant robot mutant fight. But you have Beast, whose ability is to jump. Snoo.
I do like that actor, though. Yeah, I do like that actor.
So that was wretched across the board as far as I'm concerned. Hugh Jackman should not have been in the role for this. I would have much preferred him to be fighting in the future and send Kitty Pryde back like you're supposed to. That
was the thing. I had read that comic, one of the few X-Men comics that I have read. And I loved it because it's this young woman who's in this terrifying, horrifying future. And she goes back to save her friends. And there's a comment that she makes to Colossus. She was sterilized.
Yep.
And so she wants to save her ability to have children. And it's very personal. And it's just this young woman that's this linchpin of the story. And they completely wrecked it.
And so it turns into Wolverine has to save the day and put the X-Men back together, which at the time of the comics, that was an actual plot that was happening. But no.
They took a really iconic storyline, though, and they just kind of shredded it.
And the future side of this, all the fight scenes I thought were amazing, mostly because Halle Berry gets butchered, and I cheered. I did not forget X-Men 1, Halle Berry. So,
I loved Blink in this. I loved Blink.
Blink was phenomenal, except for the fact that I was writing my first superhero book, and they basically stole my powers. But okay, I'm good with that. Little mad. But what I didn't like was, so you have future Wolverine in this, which is far future, no longer makes sense with Logan.
Nope.
And then it goes back into the past, and they could have played up the fact that he's just a mutant with bones in his hands a lot more. And they kind of made like a quick reference, and they were like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move on. And he could have been a cool younger version of himself, but their insistence on playing Hugh Jackman, play Hugh Jackman, and all of that, like, I get where they were going with it, but
he was, I hate to put it this way, he was way too freaking calm to be Wolverine. And that's not his fault. That's a director decision and a script decision. There was really nothing he could do about that. And the fight scenes he did have, he was still very feral in them. But he was him, Wolverine, as the voice of reason with Professor X.
He was Cyclops. He was Cyclops.
Yes, and that was so weird to me. And it is, as much as I hate Cyclops as a character, you still really did him a disservice by basically combining Wolverine and Cyclops. Then you have no point, there's no reason to ever bring in Cyclops.
And let's be honest, how awesome would a fastball special between Wolverine and Magneto in the future been? Or
Seriously.
a Wolverine and those advanced Sentinel battle. Like, those were the type of fights we were like longing for.
Yes.
But no, he's too busy taking on 1980s policemen and politicians. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So Hugh Jackman, you get half a point for this movie. And really, your future self just laid there and grunted a lot. And not convincing grunting.
Not convincing grunting. I will say this is my second favorite X-Men film because I genuinely love James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender in those roles. I love them. And I love this movie not for Hugh Jackman, but I like it for this different view of Professor X, this tortured soul that doesn't want this destiny. He doesn't want everybody's pain. In fact, he has that wonderful scene with Wolverine where he just tells him, he's crying and screaming at him, I don't want your pain. I don't want your future. I don't want any of this.
Yeah.
And I love the tortured side of Xavier, but then they give you this very cool and reasoned Wolverine, and I'm just like, okay, you ruined it.
I will say that one of the best things about the movie was the initial trailer that came out. It had one of the best soundtracks. It is by John Murphy, and it's Sunshine Adagio in D minor, in the scene where it's showing the two faces of the professor and Wolverine going between them. That trailer made a huge promise that
it didn't keep.
It didn't keep, unfortunately.
No.
But I will say, I didn't like the first class side of it, but I liked the other, and it did move quick enough that I never felt bored.
Yeah. No, it had good pacing. It really was good pacing.
And I would watch it again, you have to detach from comic books.
Yeah, quite a bit. So after that is
X-Men
Apocalypse.
Which is my second favorite Hugh Jackman.
How is that that movie is a fucking train wreck.
Did you watch the YouTube clip of just Hugh Jackman?
Yes, but I've also seen that entire movie, and I was like, they ruined Storm, they ruined Jean Grey, they ruined everything I have ever loved about X-Men in that movie. Like, if I could, I would get a copy and I would pee all over it. Like, I hate that movie that much.
Warren Taggart, renowned mutant geneticist, turned FBI agent, turned archaeologist all of a sudden. Like, no one knew what was going on in that movie. Like, I think they read the script and were like, fuck. Like, I think they got signed up before the script was handed to them.
Oh, yeah. Which is probably why Jennifer Lawrence was like, you know what? In the next one, just kill me. She was like, done.
Again, if J-Law had been in that movie butt naked the whole thing, it still would have been crap.
Yeah.
And even the fans knew that. We were tired of her at this point. And so Hugh Jackman has my second favorite role, which is Weapon X. So the old school original origin story, not the crappy one that we got next to, because I'm sorry, that was subpar. The original true Weapon X program comes out of nowhere in this story. It has no purpose being there.
It's just like they needed something and they threw it in. I mean.
And it fit. And it actually even fit up to X2. The plot worked in a weird, bizarre way. Because the adult in X2, the bad dude, is the young bad dude in this movie.
Wait. Wait. Stryker. Well, no, Stryker's in Days of Future Past.
He is in.
So he's in 3 movies, actually. He's in X-Men Origins, Wolverine. He's in X2. And his younger self is in Days of Future Past.
And I think that's him standing at the control panel in Apocalypse. He has, I don't even think he has a role, to be honest.
No, but something happens? I don't remember. No, he can't get chopped up. Well, I guess he can because they reset the timeline. Who the hell knows at this point?
But what I love about it is, one, the moment the thing opens and the foot steps out, you're like, Hugh Jackman.
Oh, everybody knew. Yeah. But here's the thing. I feel like they put the cameo in there because they were like, we need something to save this movie because nothing else is going to.
The best part is the action figure of X-Men. When I was younger, there was a Weapon X action figure, and it was that.
Exactly. Oh, seriously?
Verbatim, every wire is in the same place, the headgear, everything.
Oh, wow.
And this is Wolverine when he becomes Weapon X. He's just been infused with the chemical, the adamantium, and they're now trying to brainwash him into being a weapon.
Oh, okay, okay.
Out, he's not Wolverine. He's Weapon X, and I thought
feral. He's completely feral.
That was what made me so incredibly happy, is that he is what I imagined, that because in the actual comic he goes feral and he escapes and then kind of starts the plot of Wolverine Origins, sort of.
Well, in the movie, Jean mind melds with him or whatever the hell she's doing, and like kind of breaks the control, and
which brings up some issues.
It was icky though, because you've got this older Wolverine and this Jean Grey that frankly looks 16, and I just felt gross. It just
there's nothing intimate about it other than the fact that she basically is like a woman who found a hurt animal. But then we think back to X-Men 1.
But also
the
actress, exactly. But then the actress also like gives him some bedroom eyes. Like if you look at that scene, there is some lust there, and I can't say that I blame her because Hugh Jackman in a tank top is transcendent, but it's icky.
The thing that makes it even worse than that is Cyclops is like still here.
He's clueless. He's totally clueless.
And the actor who played Cyclops was basically told to be aloof the whole time. Like never look, you know what's going on.
Yeah. You're a confused teenage boy who's horny for her and she doesn't know you exist. Okay, go.
And she's got some daddy issues apparently.
Yeah, okay. They brought out that troubled original storyline of Professor X and Jean Grey, and I felt really gross. Like that movie, that's what I mean by that movie ruined everything I have ever loved about X-Men.
But I will say, because it was such a short cameo, I mean, I think the whole thing takes 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just pure, like, I mean, rated R level brutality.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's the Wolverine I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I loved that piece of it. Completely ignore the rest of the other hour and 27 minutes.
Just look up that on YouTube. Just do that and you'll be fine. Which brings us to
everyone's number one.
Logan.
Which I kind of wish that they had worked Magneto into the plot, now that I'm thinking about it.
Really?
Not for plot reasons. Like, he could have been the guy pumping gas for all I care. But the fact that Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman started this journey and they got to say farewell.
Yeah. Well, there is a reference actually to him. Oh, this movie is so full of tragedy, and I think that's why I love it so much. There is a reference to Professor X accidentally killing Magneto in particular. It was like the first time his powers went kind of wonky before he did the huge like mutant atom bomb where he basically killed all the other mutants.
So this movie is a really great blend of a Western sci-fi.
Yeah,
It's
very.
not a superhero movie in any way, shape, or form. It's strictly a Western sci-fi. And again, we find Wolverine and some random young girl who he has an affinity for. He always pulls on like this dad persona, which the movies never address. It is talked about a lot in the comic books.
She's basically, well, it's referenced that they took some of his DNA and they created her. So she is technically his daughter.
Yeah. And so this movie was really, really well done in the fact that you knew the moment the scene started that you weren't going to get a Wolverine action film. The best thing about this movie is that you're watching what happens to superheroes when they're no longer super.
Yeah.
And it's not dark, but it's very reflective.
It's kind of gory. I mean, it earns its R rating because it does not hold back on the violence in any way.
And I think it's the first time that we get to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine with an ongoing soft side. And he's gotten soft. I mean, quite literally, he is no longer a good Wolverine. He's retired from the game.
But he's bitter.
Yeah.
There is a really bitter, sad edge to him.
And it's kind of, it definitely feels like everything that he's done up to this point has been for nothing.
Yeah. There is a sense of my life is pointless. And if I can just get through the day, then it'll be fine. And
he is truly a cowboy, and he just wants to ride off into the sunset and be done with his story. And what I really liked about this is I knew the moment that first scene happened, we were going to get the death of Logan.
Yeah.
I hadn't read the storyline at this point, so I didn't know it very well. It had to be pretty drastically altered because you couldn't use the Hulk and Hawkeye.
Yeah, Dan was saying Old Man Logan is a very different comic.
And it took the spirit, and I think it did a really good job of that. And because he's now the caretaker of Professor X, the only man who has attempted to be a father figure, which is not addressed, but in the comic books, he was brutally beaten by his father over and over again. God. And he doesn't have any memories of this, but it explains why he is what he is. And to see him being the parent to the only man who's ever been his father is probably the most gut-wrenching aspect of this whole movie.
God, yeah. And the thing is, though, there's still, what I loved about it is, you're absolutely right. There is a softness to him because he genuinely loves Xavier. Xavier is, honestly, his entire world is Xavier at this point. It's about getting him the medicine he needs so that he can live in some comfort and not go nuclear again. But there's also this, he does it, and honestly, I think this is the best acting Hugh Jackman has ever done, because he balances out that softness and that life has beaten you down so much with still giving us the gruff and bitter Logan, Wolverine kind of side of things.
And at this point in the film, the only reason he fights is because he wants to die.
Yeah.
And so the whole premise of the movie is, we're going to throw you a curveball, and now you have a reason to live. Oh.
But it's too late. We find out it's too late because the adamantium is poisoning him. And that, I feel funny saying this about a superhero movie, but there was a realism to this that was really beautiful. And this is the only superhero movie I think I've ever seen that I could say was artistic. It's an artistic and beautifully done film.
And basically he's shown that, you know, just like everything else becoming elder, you're not as fast or strong, or your abilities aren't as up to speed. Like, they do wane over time, and they can't keep up with what's been done to him.
Yeah, like there's points where he can't get his claws out, so he has to pull them out. That, I mean, it's really gut-wrenching.
And, you know, we as the audience have grown up with this Wolverine now, and we are basically watching this love letter to Wolverine.
Yeah.
And there's only one way it can end. And the scene where Patrick Stewart is killed was one of most gut-wrenching.
I still cry. All you have to do is mention it and I cry.
The berserker rage that comes after that is the first time in the movie that we've really seen him become Wolverine again.
Yeah.
And you see, like, and this is one of the things I do like about Wolverine, is he's always had a motivation. He's always had a purpose and a certain ethical code, gray as it is. And that is priceless. So I thought that was great. And I think pairing Hugh Jackman, or Wolverine, because they're the same thing at this point,
yeah,
with a female who is literally, if you think back to the first X-Men, she is everything he was in that movie.
Yeah.
Stubborn,
and more.
Yeah.
She's more feral. Her fighting is more brutal and primal. She's like, she literally is like a little Wolverine, because Wolverines are tiny, furry, ferocious, and that is X-23 to a T, honestly.
And so you get this beautiful swan song, and what made me kind of mad is before the Fox sellout to Disney, is there was talk about making an X-23 film to continue the Wolverine legacy, and I was like, no.
Yeah, please don't ruin it.
We got the movie we deserved. For once in Mutants, we got what we deserved.
Yeah.
And so I read so many articles where Hugh Jackman's like, you know, it's the end of an era for me, and, you know, it's something that became a second skin, and I have to admit that there's going to be a reboot of it, but I have to understand, like, it's not my Wolverine. Yeah. And it's funny because even the comic books started to reflect Hugh Jackman. And then you see, the thing that I love the best is Hugh Jackman watched all the Clint Eastwood movies.
Oh, really?
Which is funny because the original Wolverine is based on Clint Eastwood.
That is so fascinating. Oh my God.
So, on the very first issue of Wolverine, it's a limited 4-issue run. I met the artist at a comic book convention. Not the amazing rich person I thought he would be, but he was still cool. And he has the original inked drawing of the cover. And I'm like, dude, I'm so happy I don't have $600 in my pocket, because I would buy it right now. And he's like, do you recognize who it is? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I got no idea. It's based off the dude from The Shining when he puts his face up against the broken door.
Oh, Jack Nicholson?
Yeah. And so that's what the drawing is based off of, Jack Nicholson.
Oh my God.
But the artist said that they couldn't keep doing Jack Nicholson because it was a little too, like, evil-ish looking. And so all the interior pages, he's modeled after Clint Eastwood.
That is fascinating.
Random trivia, which I thought was funny, because Hugh Jackman watched Clint Eastwood movies, because in the movies he doesn't have a lot of lines, but he has to do a lot of emoting. And that's where he got his inspiration, and it comes full circle.
It does. It does, because Clint Eastwood did all those Westerns. And this is definitely, Logan was definitely a Western. And in fact, the references to Shane in the film are very, spot on.
Oh, the trailer and when Johnny Cash's Hurt come on, you're just like, ugh, kill me.
That cover of that Nine Inch Nails song is one of the all-time best covers of any song I've ever heard in my life, because Johnny freaking Cash singing that, like the man understands it. And then putting that over the trailer was a touch of brilliance. It was just
and no longer did you expect him to have a cowboy hat, but he kind of had a cowboy hat.
Well, yeah, and the poster.
Yeah.
Is the sun behind him, the slumped shoulders. I mean, you half expect him to have a shoulder, a hip holsters. Yeah.
But it's not the last Wolverine, because there's Deadpool.
I can't believe you're doing this. Okay.
So the only reason he has more credits than Samuel L. Jackson is because Ryan Reynolds demanded that he be in the film, and because they couldn't get him to be in the film, there is a photograph of him
stapled to Deadpool's face.
Yeah.
So there he is.
I honestly, if Hugh Jackman is ever going to put the claws back on, I hope it is for a cameo in a Deadpool movie. Now, Deadpool 2 really pissed me off, but I hope there is a Deadpool 3 and Hugh Jackman actually does make a cameo as Wolverine, because that would be everything.
Supposedly, it's going to be X-Force, but I think with the merger, there's going to have to be something different. So,
okay.
But yeah,
I would love it.
And I don't want them to like have anything big. Just again, like with an First Class at the bar, he's just sitting there with a stogie and be like, "We're gonna do this again." And he goes something like, "Are you gonna have your mouth sewn shut?" I want Wolverine to deliver Deadpool's line.
It would be great if it was the exact same bar and he's sitting there with the same stogie, the whole thing, and just have Deadpool come sit next to him and like have this whole conversation. I would love that so much.
And I mean, it's not going to screw with the timeline any more than it does.
I know. And you're right. It doesn't have to be long, like 30 seconds. And I would be a happy fangirl, honestly.
So I guess the easy one for the question of the week is going to be, what is your favorite instance of Hugh Jackman portraying Wolverine?
Yeah. Whether that's the movie or just a moment, a line that he delivered.
I just love Hugh Jackman.
He's a teddy bear. He said in an interview about Logan that the actress that plays X-23 actually gave him a bruise. She punched him for real in the audition, and he's like, yeah. He's like, that little fist. Sorry, guys, but she hit me harder than anybody that's ever hit me. He's like, I had a huge bruise on my arm for days.
And if you want something really fun to recapture the love of the characters that we do cherish, on Graham Norton, there is the three. It's the first one is Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and Hugh Jackman. But then there's another one, and it's funnier to watch them out of order, because then it's McAvoy, Fassbender, and Jackman, and you're like, oh my God, it's Days of Future Graham Norton.
It's the Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart one was just supposed to be the two of them, and then Ian McKellen crashed the interview, and I love it so much.
I just imagine that they FaceTime each other all the time.
All the time.
What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. Baking.
No, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are like platonic life partners. They just really are. I love them for it.
Yeah, I want, and even if you haven't seen it, the Zoom call that reconnects them all was quite funny.
Yeah.
Because Ryan Reynolds had to crash it.
Did he really?
Oh yeah.
Wait, okay, now I have to go look this up. It was X-Men Zoom call.
I think it was First Class is the one that did it. And so
I have to find this.
And Ryan Reynolds shows up, and Sophie Turner's just like, I think I have to go get ready for another Game of Thrones audition or something. He wanders off and shuts it off.
Oh my God.
And you're not entirely sure if they're kidding or they just don't like Ryan Reynolds.
How can you not like Ryan? I mean, I suppose he could be an asshole, but it is kind of funny. Anyway.
But yeah, definitely watch it.
Okay.
All right. So that's it for this week.
Yeah, it's a bit of a longer episode, but I think it's worth it.
It's Hugh Jackman. Of
It
course.
is Hugh Jackman.
20 years of Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, we needed some time. All right. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget to visit superherofiction.com, your one-stop shop for all your superhero novel needs. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Bye. To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.